Okay, we're good.
Warming up here for you.
We're from Texas. At least she no longer lives in Texas, but she's from Texas. So.
That's right.
And we're from East Texas, which is the humid part.
So to compromise, I moved to LA, where it's like, I was actually in Atlanta, and I never thought I'd have to go to Atlanta to escape a heat wave. Like, something is wrong. Yeah.
Well, welcome everybody. Good evening, and the boys and men. It's always a treat to have Joe Lansdale with us, and now we're in for a special treat. His daughter Kasey's here, and they're going to be talking about this wonderful new collection of stories. Terror is Our Business, and we were talking in the back. We're lucky that the monsoon hasn't rolled in today. And, this time last evening it was getting pretty serious.
And he jinxed
Still
it.
happens.
Way to go, man.
No, I hope not.
Put the jinx on it.
Yeah.
Knock on the wood on the behind.
That's right. Well, tell us a little bit about how this duo got started. The first stories were written by you, Joe.
Yeah, I'll start. Is that these are very different than the sort of things I normally do, but I grew up on a lot of the old-fashioned horror by Algernon Blackwood, and there's a list of the what you call the supernatural detectives, and I was trying to think of another bunch of them for right now, and even things like Night Stalker that used to be on TV with Darren McGavin. I always liked those, and I thought, well, you know what, I'd kind of like to write a few of those myself, and they tend to be slightly structured, and the ones that I had liked and read took place in usually like a men's club. And I thought, well, I want to have a female protagonist. I want to get out of that the old men's club thing, like William Hope Hodgson always. They went to his house when Carnacki would tell them a story or something that he had been involved with, or they would go into some episode together. And I thought, well, it might be nice to kind of do a few of those. So I ended up over a few years doing 4 of them. I think maybe 5 or 6 years it took me to do the 4. And I never thought of them as a collection at all. I think a couple of them got picked up for Best of the Year and stuff like that. And then Kasey and I were, well, actually she pulled a trick on me, and she'd probably tell you more about that, and I'll let her. But I thought I was through writing those. I never had any intention of actually putting them together. And because I don't like to collaborate. She'll tell you, I'm not a collaborator, because I'm always right. I figure that I know what I want, So, but anyway, I'll let you go ahead and how this thing got to be what it is.
So, as he said, he had his character Dana Roberts, and he was writing these stories. And then in the introduction, I mentioned that a friend of mine, he's named Christopher Golden. He's also an author, bestseller. You might have read something by him. He was doing an anthology collection, and he wanted my father to write a story for him. Now, Christopher and I are friends, so he wrote me, and he said, well, I asked your dad, but your dad said no.
Because it was a collaboration.
Because it's the story, or the collection is called Dark Duets. So, he wanted somebody to write with him, and Dad said, well, I don't collaborate. And I said, well, Dad, what about me? Would you collaborate with me? Because I've been writing a little bit and selling a few things here and there. And he said, no. And so I said, okay, well, Christopher, just sit tight, because I have an idea. So I wrote about 5 pages of a story with a character that I had sort of been playing with in another project. And I just sent him that email with those 5 pages, and I just said, okay, I just wait. About maybe a day or 2 later, I get an email that says, you are evil, I've added some pages. So, and then he was in. And so we started that story for that collection, and it was a story I actually really loved, and that character...
It was a standalone.
Yeah, it was a standalone, and that character, her name was Jana. There's Dana and Jana, which is how we never intended to cross universes, because that is really hard. Dana and Jana. So we wrote this story. Jana was the narrator, and then we ended up saying, well, that she might actually fit in this other universe with Dana.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that I actually like more humor in my stories, and the ones I had done, I had purposely pulled back on that to make them feel like those older stories, and I was not real comfortable with that. And Kasey's character was very funny, and I thought, if you put the two together, you've got an interesting sort of supernatural investigator in the form of like a modern Sherlock and Watson, but with women, you know. And one of them, and they're very, very different. My character's very stiff, very together, knows her business, very much professional. And the other lady, Jenna, she had her own adventure in Blind Love that we did, and she's a mess. I mean, everything just goes, you know. So we thought, well, what if we put them together? Because that one, she strangely resembles somebody I know.
When he says a mess, he means an endearing.
Highly endearing.
There are definitely some elements of my personality that are Jana. So
Yeah.
it's fun, and it's nice because not only do we get to bring these characters together just because we like characters, but we get to do something as a family, and that's that's nice. That legacy will always exist, and that's fun for at least me.
Yeah. And, you know, and people are biting on it for TV shows and comics, so we don't know that that'll happen. But well, I think we're surprised.
Yeah,
you know?
I think people have really connected with these characters in a way that I don't think we anticipated.
No.
And it's always scary to put your feelings out and just kind of wait for everyone to judge you.
Oh, I
so
don't care.
but I put a lot of heart into that, and it's different for you. You have an established body of work. This is me really following in the footsteps of someone who has a legacy, and having to know that comparison is going to exist.
And she's
Does that
written other
make you
stuff
feel
on her
old,
own,
Joe?
too. What's that?
Does that make you feel old?
As a matter of fact.
Any word with legacy?
Yeah, the legacy. I always like when they'll go, the legend Joe Lansdale. I go, oh man, I know what that means. He's almost dead.
Well, tell us what you mean by super normal as opposed to
Well, yeah,
supernatural.
I was saying supernatural to kind of make it so you could understand it. But Dana, who is really, I guess, the Sherlock, the one who knows a lot, she doesn't say supernatural. She doesn't believe in the supernatural. She's an atheist. But what she does believe that there are things that we don't understand yet, and that they have scientific answers, and that we just haven't quite figured that out yet, but they are things that can be figured out. And so that's why she always makes a point, I'm a supernormal detective, not supernatural. And in fact, every one of the stories that she mentions that, and since they were collected, there's a little bit of repetition in that would not have been there had, we saw into the future and knew we were going to collect
We would have
those.
changed their names if we'd have seen
Yeah,
it
we
in
would
the
have done
future.
that too, yeah. And also, the character that Kasey invented is, I don't think she thinks about it much in terms, it's just, this is some weird business.
Yeah, she's not. I mean, it would be as though I were tossed in the middle of this. I would go, all right, well, that happened. That's weird, and we're gonna move on from
And
that.
it gets weirder, and it's scary in a pleasant way. You know, it's kind of those old thrills when you were a kid. You know, when you, that's sweet. I wish I had that on a recording. That would be nice in the book, because every time you get to it, you open it up. And then they aren't like, blood and guts stories. They're more creepy stories. They aren't exactly ghost stories, but they're certainly creepy stories.
Well, it's interesting because I'm thinking of your book, and blanking the title, Lost Echoes. Maybe.
Lost Echoes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, several of the stories in the book, there's a haunted lighthouse story.
That's right.
A haunted house story.
Right.
And
And an
then-
origin story about the H tree, which is do y'all know about the H tree? Well, I'm not going to tell you. No, the H tree is this supernatural idea that people really believe, and there was one of them supposedly in Pennsylvania that these trees are the portal to another dimension, usually a devilish dimension, and so that one of them is about that. But that's an actual legend, and that's been out there for a long time. So, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, we just talked about this before. That certain places where
Yeah, you were telling about that place you were at.
the Apache Death Cave on Route 66. I'll tell you about it later. It was fantastic.
You get the gist from the name.
Apache Death Cave, yes.
And the photos he had were terrific. I was like
Spooky
getting chills
place.
just looking at them.
Yeah. But just this idea that, places that have violence or traumatic pasts, those
Leave
things are
echoes.
somehow echoed into the place. And that comes up in these stories, certainly.
Yeah. No, and I think that Dana is always trying to figure out the logical answer, but she also believes that things like, from all kinds of religions work, not because, in her view, that there's a God, but because all of these things are so well believed by the people who believe these things that they have taken on a power. because they're so invested in it. So that's her take. And Jana's like, I don't know, but that's some weird stuff in the world. I'm not getting over in that. But it's, I think it's interesting like that because I wanted it to be a little different than the way it usually is, because I thought, you know, we want to include jinns and we want to include all these people of different, you know, religions, different beliefs, different backgrounds. So you would have these horrors and these supernatural elements, not the sort of thing that you could always just take care of with a crucifix. It might work on some, but depend on the belief level and what, you know, particular monster or supernatural element it is. It's mostly, like I said, it's just creepy. It's got some Lovecraftian elements. If people, you know, hear or know much about Lovecraft, I think there are certainly a couple of stories that are very Lovecraft-like. You know.
Well, there's that whole interesting era. You know, you mentioned Algernon Blackwood,
Right.
who I love.
William Hope Hodgson.
Hodgson and Le Fanu and
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
people
right.
like that. You know, from
Love
the
all
early,
those
early
people.
part of the last
Arthur
century.
Machen.
Yeah. Early part of the last century, where all that weird
I
kind of
grew up
stuff
with all
was
that
going
stuff.
on in the air. You know, Madame Blavatsky,
Yeah, I forgot.
seances,
Yes, right.
all that weirdness.
There was also, I can't think of the lady's name now. She was somebody who was very much a believer in the psychic phenomena, and she wrote a series about a psychic detective, but they were very much more a philosophical approach to them.
Right.
I can't think of what her name is right now. I just recently discovered her, and I read a series of stories. I didn't know exactly what to make of them, but I thought, well, those are interesting, because she comes from a true believer's standpoint.
Right, and then some of the early pulp, you know, kind of the weird pulp stuff, like the
Yeah.
UB Cave and
Well, yeah, and the Hodgson stuff was, you know, definitely Carnacki and all that, and Seabury Quinn, and he had a kind of supernatural Poirot, you know, and he investigated werewolves, vampires, every class, mummies, every classical thing you could think of. Seabury Quinn's character, who's I can't think of what his name is right now. I have 3 volumes of his work that I've read. But he was the most popular writer for Weird Tales, which was an old pulp magazine. A lot of people think Lovecraft, Howard, but it wasn't. It was Seabury Quinn.
Clark Ashton Smith.
No,
No.
Seabury Quinn's the name of the writer.
Oh, I see.
The characters who I can't think of at the moment.
Right. So the two characters have a really neat kind of yin and yang sort of vibe to them. You know, Dana's a little bit more formal and
Very,
proper.
yeah, a little more
And,
stiff. And she's always looks perfect. Her hair's immaculate. Jana always looks like she just got out from in front of a fan, or you know, or something. She's always, no offense, but she's always something of a mess, you know. And she's funny, and she sees the humor in things that Dana does not. She takes things seriously, but they begin to find out that they're a really good match for one another. They're a good team. They fill in spaces where one is missing one thing and one's missing another. Those spaces fill in.
Well,
it's like a good marriage.
Was
I
it
guess.
unintentionally kind of? I mean, you think of Captain Leonard and same way.
Well, yeah, and I don't think we did any of that
No.
intentionally.
No,
I think
yeah.
it just, he had a character, I already had a character,
Which you're
and
right.
we put them in the same universe, and it worked. And like we were saying earlier, it worked better than we anticipated. It worked better than I think we had ever even thought it could.
Yeah.
Because when we wrote the Blind Love story, the standalone before Dana was introduced to Jana, that story in that collection was one of the lighter books. It was one of the lighter stories in that.
Yeah, it
book.
was supposed to be real dark. Ours was
And
funny.
it was it was dark, and the people that enjoyed it really enjoyed it, but it was definitely
Yeah.
not as dark as some of the others. And so we felt like that character in that story didn't get her moment because she was not as dark as she needed to be for that original collection. Yeah.
Jules de Grandin's that character's name.
Jasper.
Yeah, Jasper. That's an old Twain story where Twain is telling a story and he's trying to think of the name of the dog and he can't think of the name of the dog. He's like, so he goes on and he keeps telling this story. And the story gets more and more elaborate. Then suddenly Twain goes, Jasper. What?
It's implemented in the family
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Whenever there's the runaround, Jasper.
Jasper.
Not important. Jasper.
Yeah.
Well, I got to hand it to you, Kasey, because the stories are just magical with your point of view.
I think
You know,
so, yeah.
They come in and really work well. So
And
much fun.
I'll be the first to say that the stories where she worked on them are better than the ones I did by myself because they're very, very much in the old style. And she brought a lot of her own personality. I remember the one that she was talking about that got me into it. But when she she was telling me, she said, you know, do you know about these eye gazing events? And I went, no.
Dating
So-
is rough.
Yeah, and then she started writing the story and sent it to me, and that's how we got in. And we'll talk a little bit about the eye gazing thing,
Yeah.
because it's part of the story.
Yeah, if it's okay, I'll read
You
some
wanna-
from it.
and before she reads, I just want to say this is one before we put the two characters together. But I think it's a nice introduction to her, to Jana, and this is the one with about something very, very peculiar, and it is funny, but it's got its weird moments. That's for darn sure.
So this is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first story we've written together since I was a child. This was the first one we come
She
together
was
to do.
actually, Keith, my son, and her were actually published by Random House when you were 8 and Keith was 12. For kids type thing, but they bought a story from them, and so that was, and I was in that too. It was a family thing, and so that was our first collaboration. My son and I write screenplays and comics together. We just did the X-Files together, and but short stories and fiction, I just didn't really think I was going to collaborate. So
this was the first collaboration that we had done since I was a child. So it was another, and actually it was an easy process of going back and forth, but it was us trying to do this long distance on
Right.
email, and this doesn't have Dana in it yet, as he said. This is just Jana's introduction, just for you to get a feel of
one
it.
thing I'm going to say about Kasey is that we wrote that story as a kid when she was 8, Keith was 12, and what they did is that I typed up what they saw, what they told me, so it was kind of in form. But Kasey had all the weird moments, and Keith had all the plot things. He was really good about plot. He would put all that together. And then Kasey had this one scene where there was a hanging. Somebody was hanged.
As 8-year-olds.
As 8-year-old, and so we wrote it in, returned it in. They wrote back and they went, "Ooh, we like this, but you know that's a little rough for a kid's story." And so we had to agree we were taking it out. And I told Kasey, I said, "Kasey, it's got to go." And she went, "Well, shit, it's just not the same."
And I've never heard the end of that story. Alright, so this is Jana. Blind love. I don't believe in love at first sight. Lust at first sight? Maybe. But love? Not so much. That strikes me as a crock. And because of that, I can't believe I let my friend Erin convince me to go to an eye-gazing party with her. A kind of modern-day hippie's answer to speed dating. What you do is you go into a room with all these other sad, dateless men and women. The timer is set, and you sit down at a table and gaze into each other's eyes for 2 minutes without speaking. When you've done that with everyone in the room, you're supposed to choose the person you felt a burning eye connection with. Go sit with them for a second round, and this time you can talk, having hopefully made a soulful bond by previous eyeball connection. I've never been happier. I've never felt more proud of you. You have no idea how precious that is. I, on the other hand, feared the first 2 minutes might only involve observing distracting mucus and a bulbous red sty. Not Erin. She was all in, high as a kite about the whole thing. It reminds me of when she went through her massage therapy phase, where the massage is applied through psychic power. You're not touched. The masseur or masseuse waves their hands over your body and channels some kind of energy from beyond the veil, or pulls it up from Mother Earth or some such thing, sticks it in your back through the enchanted power of healing hands. I injured my back once during a sex act with a gymnast. He proved agile but had all the personality of a pommel horse. It was a one-time experience in which I was assured certain positions would bring me unique pleasure, but instead brought me bad back and 3 sleepless nights due to embarrassment and pain. Erin assured me her masseur could pull out the ache, if not the embarrassment. What he pulled out of me was $45 and an hour out of my life. I went home with the pain I came in with. Bottom line is she's the kind who reads her horoscope for real, believes there are special numbers in her life, and that constipation is a sign of energy clog instead of pizza, tacos, and an abundance of cheese. We even did nude skydiving once. Well, there was the parachute. It was supposed to free our inner self. She swore to me. We ended up with several seconds of fear, skinned knees, a scraped ass, and coming down not in the field where we planned, but in a grocery store parking lot in the middle of a busy Sunday afternoon that led to newspaper prominence, a fine, and overnight jail time. The problem is she's my best friend, and I felt obligated to support her in her quest for the perfect mate, this time via an eye-gazing party. We were coming off a light, me driving, when Aaron said, "I think it sounds romantic." With a room full of people doing the same thing, I don't find that romantic so much as creepy. Which celebrity started this trend? I'm just trying to find happiness, Jana. I don't think you're all that unhappy. You just think you're supposed to have a man to make you happy. What's that old saying? A woman needs a man like a fish needs a motorcycle? Bicycle, Aaron said. Well, if a fish doesn't need a bicycle, I'm going to bet they don't need a motorcycle either. The thing is, you'll find someone, and if you don't, well, there's no cars at your house all day when we're old. You got to stop obsessing about having a relationship. I mean, you got all the tools. You're smart and pretty, have a good job and all your own teeth. So eventually, someone who has all their parts working and isn't too scary to look at is going to end up with you. Gee, thanks. Hey, I'm in the same boat here. My last date spent the whole night at dinner talking about his Lego collection. Let me say this without meaning to hurt your feelings, Aaron. You're too desperate, and guys can smell desperation the way animals smell fear. They either feed on it until there's nothing left of you, or it makes them nervous and they run. You may have a point, she said, as I hit the main highway and honked at a truck that tried to switch lanes with me in it. Yet I feel like I'm running out of options. Jordan, girl I work with, she went to one of the events once. Met a guy there she's been with ever since. They've even started to dress alike. Obviously, mine and Aaron's idea of what's adorable in a relationship is quite different. We turn around now, chicken out, she said, and I end up with a house full of cats and a passion for macrame. You'll be to blame. I am more than willing to carry that burden. Well, it's too late because we're here. We certainly were. It was a long, rambling piece of property right in the middle of town. There were hedges around it high enough you'd have to have a ladder to see over the top, and there was only a gap between them to serve as an opening to a driveway. I wheeled through the gap and along the driveway that wound through a number of tall and well-groomed trees, parked behind a car in a row with a lot of other cars, all of them so expensive and cool they made my ride look like a hay wagon. All along the walk there were little signs with orange hearts painted through them, and above the hearts were a pair of sleepy blue eyes, and at the corner of each sign was a black arrow pointing up the walk. This is either the place, I said, or an elaborate scam to murder us and sell us for body parts. You're always negative, Aaron said. Experience has been a harsh teacher. At the door, Aaron knocked, and we were greeted by a small, pretty, dark-skinned woman decked out in traditional East India garb, flowing, bright-colored fabric that always made me think of tandoori chicken and saffron rice. The woman at the door looked the part, but she moved as if she missed her high heels. But thank goodness she kept chewing her gum. I wouldn't want to have done with all that loud smacking. Aaron showed her a prepaid receipt, and I showed mine, thinking this was $200 I might as well just wipe my ass on. The place was decorated with photos of exotic spots in India and a few from China. There were shelves containing knickknacks, including a small statue of an elephant with a stick of incense sticking out of its uplifted trunk. The incense smelled like damp earth perfumed lightly with burning silk. Love paid well. The woman took our coats, put them away in a hall closet, and silently led us down a long hallway to a doorway draped with a beaded curtain. When we reached that point, she stopped, said in an accent that had a lot more Texas in it than India, "Go on in, the Swami awaits. Watch that step down, though, it's a booger. I busted my butt there twice today." She went away, and we took caution of our asses and made the step. The room was huge, but no bigger than Grand Central Station. There was a series of small card tables all about and a chair on either side of each. There were people everywhere. The men were on one side of the room, the women on the other. They were about as diverse as a jury pool, and I was relieved to see there was no one here I knew, though, come to think of it, had there been, they might have been as embarrassed as I was. At the far end of the room, almost far away, a pair of binoculars would have been helpful, was another beaded curtain, and out of it came a man who looked like a badly drawn cartoon character. Mid-60s, short and thin, white socks with orange stripes and sandals, a ponytail of gray, frizzy hair, and he carried a staff, as if he might later in the afternoon have to do a bit of mountain climbing in search of his goat herd. I said, "Is he really wearing a cape?" "I believe he is," Aaron said. I think even she was thinking she might want to go back to her horoscopes and numerology. "At least he didn't come in behind a puff of smoke," I said. Our Swami moved to the center of the room and lifted his staff like Moses about to strike the walk and bring forth water, and said, "I am Swami Saul, and tonight you will bathe in the sweet essence of each other's souls." I thought, oh shit. But I must admit, he had a very nice voice, deep and resonant, just the sort of thing to lull you to sleep when counting sheep fails. Gently lowering the cane, he smiled and showed us he had some really nice teeth. The eyes are the windows to the soul. Humans have known this for centuries. Sometimes we forget the obvious. We don't always allow them to do the speaking. We look away, we look down. We don't even make eye contact when we talk. How many men in here really look at women when you speak to them? I mean their eyes, not their bodies. I'm not denying that can also be a treat for the eyes, but think about it, men. How many of you fail to actually concentrate on the eyes and the soul of a woman? There was a bit of shuffling, and one of the men, an average-looking guy with a comb-over, said, "I'm guilty of that." "No need to comment," said our Swami. It was a rhetorical question. "Oh," said the man with the comb-over, and he made a seemingly practiced step that placed him behind one of the other men. "Today's society is too fast-paced," said the Swami, "too reliant upon instant gratification. I promise you, after tonight, you will have truly touched each other's souls, and though I cannot make an absolute promise you will match one another with your internal essence, you are all more likely to do so than through traditional dating, and therefore have a real opportunity to meet your proper soulmate. Is that what you would like? Is that why you're here?"
That's a real thing, by the way. They actually have those eye gazing parties.
So, I didn't go on, it's a thing. It's, I didn't go on one, but I was reading about it, and they really do have you sit
You
in
say
a room.
you didn't go.
Trust me, if I went, I would be telling that story immediately. And they do. They sit there and they have you just stare at somebody because, and after this came out, people really wanted to try that. That was like a very exciting thing for people. And it's very hard and uncomfortable to look somebody in the eyeballs for longer than about 20 seconds without like shifting or kind of like
You seem more
blinking.
informed than you admit.
But like I just said, when it came out, everybody wanted to do it.
Yeah.
So I sat around with people, staring them in the eyes, and it's like, it's uncomfortable after a little while. I mean, it's like we're still good, but I feel it's on the cusp of.
It's going back, going south. And then it gets weird after that point.
Right? Yeah, so that's not even the supernatural stuff. That's just their everyday.
Now, is that an LA thing, or is it
Oh, yeah.
everywhere?
It's definitely an LA
It
thing. Yeah,
sounds
I think
like
also, and this is going to be shocking to anybody who knows the culture, but I think it's also a Japanese thing. And
Oh, that's right.
that seems right.
We'll have to talk to Yuko about that.
I know.
Yeah. Her friend Yuko.
One of my best friends is Japanese, so I'm always like checking with her and
Yeah.
thinking about this.
There's also, I wanted to ask you guys, there's a really refreshing kind of thread underneath all these stories of skepticism kind of versus, wrestling with these things.
Yeah.
And not just, there's a lot of humor, but there's all taking them serious. I don't know if there's a question there, but
I think that's just, I mean,
That's
as
what
a
we do,
person, that's what you do. You're constantly battling, and even though it hasn't even gotten to the weird stuff yet, it's like even that situation of someone who does want to find love, but also doesn't want to deal with the bullshit with it, or somebody who wants to keep their friend, but then it's like when you support a friend, but you think they're ridiculous. You want love, but you've got the problems with that, and I think that's just what
I'm
we
a
do.
non-believer, but I'm just a storyteller. I like stories. I can tell stories about the supernatural, even though I don't believe in it. And I can tell stories that are crime stories. If you're a storyteller, everything's fascinating. Everything's fascinating. You don't have to believe it. You only have to believe it while you're writing.
Well, and even the supernatural, it's like, I don't necessarily say I believe in ghosts, but there have been times where I've seen a shadow and I go, what was that? And I think it's that side of me that wants it to be real. And
Yeah.
I was on, this is so funny, and it is what it is. I was on an episode of Finding Bigfoot, and a lot of people wanted to know if I believed in Bigfoot. And my answer was always, I hope that we find something. Because the side of me that would love to uncover a Bigfoot, a ghost, a flying saucer, I want to believe that there are other things and there's possibilities. But until that time comes, then I'm not convinced.
I'm a skeptic, but I want to believe.
But I'm open to all that, and I think that's what you read there is the openness to have it happen, but until it's proven.
right.
They about the Bigfoot, they called Casey to be on Bigfoot, and they said Finding Bigfoot, right? And they said, well, we want you to be, because she's a country singer. I don't know if you know this, that she is a successful country singer who also does acting and audio books.
All right,
And only if they're Texan audio books, but she does
It's a
audio.
particular voice that's
Yeah,
needed.
she's done some of my stuff, some stuff for George R.R. Martin and different people. But she was on that, and they had filmed her at the Cash cabin because John Carter Cash, Johnny Cash's son, is her producer. So they shot part of it at the cabin, then they shot the rest of it out in the woods where they're like calling for Bigfoot. Then they have you call and sing to Bigfoot.
Yes.
That's what.
And I don't want to ruin the episode, you guys.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to watch it to find out
What
if we
was it?
found him or not.
Squatchy Tom?
Squatchy Tom.
Squatchy Tom. And here's a bit of weird business is that you have finding Bigfoot. Well, of course, I have a cousin that
I do have a
that had a TV show called Killing Bigfoot, and people go, "Oh no!" The guy said, "Don't worry, man. Bigfoot's safe because I don't
It's
believe
not the
it."
next Bill O'Reilly book, is it?
Yeah. But what's weird is like Bill Paxton and I, before his untimely death, we went out in the woods with my cousin who took us out on the river bottoms because I grew up in the river bottoms. But Bill was going to direct, Paxton was going to direct a book of mine called The Bottoms, which was about, the bottoms. So we went out in the woods, and here's my cousin, who's just talk about East Texas and Louisiana. That's him. And we had such a big time, but as we were walking, Paxton said, "What are you Lansdale's made out of? Y'all aren't even tired. Just keep going, And but we had a great time going down in the river bottoms, and every time we have a collective Yankees or people from Yankees in Hawaiian shirts, Los Angeles, and they want to go see the bottom. So I get my cousin who is the Killing Bigfoot guy, and we go out into the bottoms. There's a picture of me sitting on the back of a truck, Paxton sitting over here, and my cousin's son is sitting. He's also a cousin, sitting in between us, and he's got like a rifle, and he's sitting there, and you can see Bill and I going.
I have to ask you guys an unrelated to writing question, which is, what was it like with boyfriends when your dad is like the ultimate martial arts badass?
You know what?
That must have been intimidating as hell for those guys.
I don't know what their minds were saying, but I would say when as an adult and on, he's always actually been pretty good about it. He's like, "You're grown, sort it out."
As an adult.
Yeah. What did I just say?
Yeah, as
What
an
words
adult.
just came out of my
But
mouth?
he was asking about.
You've never had to put any of them on the floor?
No, but I've been.
No, but my former was a martial arts student of
That's
his,
true.
and so he, he already got the thread in early.
Yeah.
Because he was
knew.
one of the slap
He knew.
monkeys, so
Yeah.
he already knew how it was going.
Yeah.
I would say it's mostly been.
Yeah, I think.
My
I'm all
my
right.
current, you seem to like.
Yeah, well, I do like her current boyfriend a whole lot. He's a professional magician.
That's true.
And he's one of the best.
Not a sentence I thought I'd say.
No.
And I was like, I moved to LA, and because you go back to East Texas, I'm like, oh, he's a magician. And they're like, does not compute. And it's people are just don't know what to do with that. And then in LA, they're like, oh yeah, that's cool. That's easy, right? It's like it's all.
Yeah, and he does a lot of other stuff too. He's an actor too. Episode of the X-Files. Because when Keith and I, my son, were writing the X-Files comics, we had to watch a bunch of old X-Files episodes, and then there was Jonathan in one of the X-Files.
I'd say my mom's the tougher one.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, I mean, mom's you cross her and you're done. It's over. Dad's been pretty easy. He's kind of like, okay.
Yeah. And I think we work well together too, because I don't really think I always know what's best. I know what's best for me. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I know what's best for me. That's why I don't collaborate.
Me.
But we work good together, I think.
No, I think honestly, you've seen us. We've traveled together and done events and things for a long time. I mean, I think the last time I was here in Poison Pen was when he had Edge of Dark Water,
That's right.
and I had a song that I'd written with that, and you guys had let me do a set here, and so we're used to always traveling and going to conventions and doing things. So
in Italy and Germany, we've done these events where I read and she sings.
Right.
And then we started doing some of them in the U.S. We've done,
it's
Los
always,
Angeles, I guess.
It's always been an easy thing for us. So I think that because our cadence is similar, our voice, both literally and as a
it's funny,
storyteller,
the
is
wife
similar.
and son don't have the same accent we have. They have an accent, but it's different.
Huh.
I think my son took her accent, which is San Antonio, which is just Southern Yankees. And then there's that. Anybody that's not from East Texas is a Yankee. Even if you're from Texas. But the thing is, it's funny is because her accent is the one he has, and then hers is similar to mine. I mean, mine's the worst because I'm way back East Texas. But also, she was a country singer, so I think that's what she grew up hearing. You know, Loretta Lynn, Reba McEntire, and Janis Joplin, and every great black soul singer. You know, she listened to all of those people when she was growing up.
And so all of that sort of came into play when we were writing. It was sort of an easy transition. You know, when I would get an email from him, I could hear the voice because it was similar to my own. And I think that was why collaborating turned out to be an easier thing. Whereas if it weren't, I think it would be harder to do it with the distance. Yeah,
and Keith and I, my son, we collaborate on screenplays and comics, but it's different because you don't have to blend the prose in the same way. It's more, and he's very analytical. You know, he can figure things out, and he's really smart in that way. And that's not my long suit, smart. And so, but I know how all this is done, so we work well together too, but in a different way. Kasey and I work well together because our styles are similar. We talk very similar, and
our humor is
very similar. And she's also written other stories, you know, on her own, and she has a great novel she's doing now. If she ever gets it finished.
I'm just clicking away every day.
Well, you know, I'm that guy that gets up every morning and writes, and then I'm done.
She's got to be the breadwinner, though, because she has the ne'er-do-well magician.
That's right, the ne'er-do-well. You know, he's like the third. I think I read somewhere that he was the third best sleight of hand magician, or considered the third.
In the Barstow area.
In anywhere. In the world. In the world.
In the Barstow area also.
In the world and Barstow. And, you know, he's at the Magic Castle a lot, which is a very famous place out in Los Angeles. In fact, he's going to perform this weekend, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like a pitch. Everybody come to LA. see the magician.
But you can't get in. You can't get in. It's one of those things where you have to know somebody to get in, of course.
Well, we know that.
Worst part about it is you have to wear a suit. I hate that.
Oh my God, this guy.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your singing career. I mean, you've done how many CDs now?
I've done a full-length album and 2 EPs, and the last EP came out last August, so almost a year ago. Had a couple cuts in different TV projects and film projects. It was on the Animal Planet when I did the Bigfoot episode. There was another song that was on the Happen Leonard, and then there was another one.
Cold in July.
But that was a different album. But I've had a couple film and TV things. So what I'm doing right now is I'm working on the songs to go on the next project. So it's kind of, I've been playing out live and experimenting with a few and kind of getting audience reaction. And when you feel that one hits, you go, okay, check, that one's going on. And then when you feel the crickets, all right, we'll try that again another time. So right now, honestly, I wouldn't say it's been pushed to the side, but right now the focus is the book that just came out the end of May. We've got, 5 or 6 more signings in California, and then we've got 2 weeks off, and then I'll fly to Texas and we'll do the major cities there. So that's basically pushed to the side until this runs its course, but you know, always writing and doing that.
I was watching TV the other day, and I was looking. I thought, all these channels. What are all these channels? What is all this stuff? And I was going through them, and then there was Kasey on a commercial. What are the likelihood?
Yeah, now that I'm in LA, I do some commercial work and some lifestyle work, and you know, it's been a really great thing for me because I'm interested in so many things, which is my blessing and my curse. But it's allowed me to do projects. You know, I've started getting into audiobooks and doing voiceovers, and that's been a lot of fun.
She did for Stan Lee. She did cartoon voices for Stan Lee's.
He had an anime show called The Reflection.
The Reflection.
So doing lots of different characters and things has also been fun because it's a way to use my voice differently.
Right.
And you know, it's a lot of experiences and opportunities that definitely come with being in that environment.
Right. I have to ask, can you remember any lines or a verse from the Bigfoot song?
Yes, because it was my song.
It wasn't a Bigfoot song.
It was the single, and I sang "Living in the Moment" because I want the Squatch to be at peace. I want him to be present.
They were actually fans. That's how she got in there. They were fans of hers, so she actually sang one of her songs off the album.
Yeah, they came to the Cash Cabin while I was recording, And of course, we had set up for them to come in, not just like burst into my recording, but they came in, and then we introduced. I'd never met him. I met him at that moment, and then they said, "Do you want to come out in the woods and hunt for squatches?" And I was like, "Lansdale? Yeah, sure." That seems right on par with. And actually, I will say, I had the best time. Of all the projects and things that I've done, I'm probably in touch with more of the cast.
They sent her to Hawaii. They liked her so much they gave her a free trip.
Yeah, I mean, we all went and did. We searched for the.
And she cashed a check.
Is there a Loch Ness Monster song coming
I
up
hope
soon?
so. I would love to go. I really had a good time with those people, and the thing is they all the hosts are sincere about their quest for Bigfoot, and it kind of makes it easier to get on board with when you know that they really mean it, even if they don't. And I think that's what we tried to do in the stories with the characters is maybe some people do believe it, and you want to connect with those people that have that element of belief, and maybe they read something here and go, oh, that just confirms what I already thought, or maybe they're on the fence and these things go, okay, that's another way to think about it. And I think that's what we all want to do is just kind of find that piece of the puzzle that makes sense for us.
Yeah. And a really nice piece of the puzzle would be if you walked the book. That'd be really great.
Way to go.
How about some?
Seamless.
Are there going to be some future Dana and Jenna?
We've talked about a novel.
novel, yeah.
And there's interest in a television show and comics. We don't know if those are going to happen, but the interest is it's not the casual interest.
Yeah, we're working on all that, and definitely I think a novel will come.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. That's the plan.
What's next in your world, Joe?
I have a new Happen Leonard book coming out next year called The Elephant of Surprise. And then I'm working on a different kind of novel. Right now it's called The Sky Done Ripped, which is a fantasy novel in the series of Ned the Seal. It's the third and last one. And then I have a big crime novel to write. And then some TV and film work. And possibly directing a film. Right now I'm in the midst of contracting for that. So if nothing blows between here and there, I'll also be directing a film based on a short story of mine that was in a Lawrence Block anthology called Sunlight and Shadow. And my son wrote the script, and it's good.
Was that the Edward Hopper
Yes.
anthology?
Yes. Mine was called The Projectionist.
How about Paradise Sky? Anything going on in
There's
that world?
interest in it, but we have not. It hasn't gone to the part where I'm excited. The Edge of Dark Water is under option. Has been under option ever since it first came out, and it was just re-optioned this week. So I get the check tomorrow. That's the good part. And there's the Night Runners looks very possible right now. There's even the Still Valentine, a short story of mine, was optioned, which I can't visualize that happening, but they pay me.
But Bubba Hotep is a thing.
Yeah. I didn't think Bubba Hotep would ever be made. It was the first thing of mine that was made, and it's like a cult film. And Bruce and I laugh about that all the time. Like, really?
I remember him saying, "Oh, that'll never get filmed. That can never be filmed." And then it got filmed. He's like, "My legacy."
And I love that film. Don't misunderstand. In fact, of the TV series and the movie Told Up Live, Bubba Hotep is my favorite because I think it's closest to what I wrote originally. Although the others are actually quite close. I've been treated very well. Incident on Mountain Road that Don Coscarelli also directed for Showtime, I thought was a very good adaptation. I've been very fortunate there, so I'm waiting for that big shoe to drop. I know that The Thicket, Peter Dinklage is supposed to be doing The Thicket, but I'm not a big fan of what I've seen of the screenplay. I don't know that that'll be the screenplay they use. But, I'm just going to cash the check on that one. And there's also a possible musical of Christmas with the Dead, which was a short story I wrote. My son wrote a full-length screenplay. It got filmed low budget, very low budget. And now they've decided they want to remake it again as a movie, plus there is a musical in the works.
See, I was expecting a laugh there. Why don't you repeat what you said? It's
Christmas
going to be a musical of
with the Dead.
Christmas with the Dead.
No laugh.
Tough crowd.
Tough crowd. They're going hard.
What about Godzilla's 12-step program?
Oh, I wish somebody would do something. Oh, there was actually a Mexican puppet show of Godzilla's 12-step program. The guy showed me the puppets are amazing. He wrote me, said, "Can I do this?" And I went, Well, yeah, if they don't get you for Godzilla, you know, I wrote the story as a parody satire, but he showed me the puppets, and I thought, man, those things are cool. Cool.
Any claymation stuff in the works?
Oh my gosh, as a matter of fact, how weird that you should be. I don't know that it's going to happen, but the Ned the Seal stuff, there's actually real interest in a TV show done as animation, and we wanted to do it in claymation. I think it's actually, and stop motion. It's probably going to be done in stop motion of some sort.
That was a joke too.
Yeah, and it was real.
That's amazing.
It's real.
All right, before I open it up to questions, my continuing fascination with your father.
Yeah.
Did you know Joe's dad? Your grandfather?
I know. My mom was pregnant with my brother when he died.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's 4 years older than Casey.
Right. Yeah. I won't ask you about it because you've already been very generous telling me stories about his old man.
He's a
He's like
great man.
the
He's a
ultimate-
great guy. You know, he had his faults like all of us, but he definitely had his strength. He was my hero, still is.
Yeah, he's written some great short pieces.
You can just
about it. Let's open it up to questions. I'm sure you have some.
Let's hope you do.
Let's hope so.
And go.
And it's very short. It'll be very, yes.
Can you talk about your collaboration process? Like you said, originally you just wrote 5 pages, you send it to them, you wrote something back. Was it just kind of back and forth like that, or did you guys each write about your specific Jaina and Dana?
No,
And-
I sent him the first part of it, and he kind of proofed what I wrote, you know, cleaned it, and then wrote his 5 or 4
And
or
then
5.
she did
and
what?
then I would clean his, and you know, and we kind of
Okay.
did that throughout.
Back
the
and forth, and it
process.
just, the difference is that the reason I don't like to collaborate is that you both have to be on the same page and ideas, and I can't do that. I don't ever plot. I don't ever figure out what's going to happen next. I just get up every morning and it's there.
Yeah, I think
And
this is a particular situation because of the closeness.
there's a connection, and we, like Keith and I, have to do that, and I'm not real good at it, is why I don't like it, and I have a hard time doing it. But Casey and I have an ability to kind of just pick up where the other one left off.
The joke is there's one brain, and it depends on who has
Yeah,
it.
who has it like that?
You're
My
sending it
mom
with the
always
email?
said that. Yeah, she's like,
But we did it by email mostly, and we would talk on the phone once in a while.
right.
If
Bleeding
we
Walls
felt-
we did in person, and
Yeah.
that was a harder one to do away because that was what
That was
happened
hard.
is I was writing my story and he was writing his story, and then you look up and you're going, these don't really match.
Yeah.
So we finished that one in person when I
Right.
went home for
We
Thanksgiving.
started one too that about a clock tower.
We have tried to. We started that thing 2
Yeah,
or 3
and
times.
it's just
and
not happening. And so we said, oh, this isn't working. And then that's when we came up with was the Bleeding Wall,
Bleeding Wall,
right?
yeah.
Which it takes place in Italy for the most part, which is a place that we have gone to many times. My wife and I go to Italy sometimes 2 and 3 times a year because they bring me over there for book signings and for different events. So this one, and of course Casey spent time, she speaks Italian. So we thought, well, this would be a good background.
And
you
it
know.
was, yeah, it
And
was
one
one
of your
those
boyfriends
that,
used to be, well, he didn't used to be, he's still Italian.
he's still Italian. To this day, he
This very
remains
day,
Italian.
he remains
You
Italian.
didn't beat the Italian.
Yeah, beat the Italian out of him, yeah.
No.
I think, like I said, I always thought, you know, when she was grown, you know, you don't like it, but you have to step back. But there's always a part of me that's going, because you know, there's nobody that's good enough for your little girl, you're right? And so that's but that's I think that we felt like this is a great background for a story because we both knew quite a bit about the Italian landscape, and you know, she speaks Italian, so we were able to add some actual elements of Italy into it, Rome.
But that was definitely one we had to do together.
Yeah, I think
so
it was harder than the others.
that was harder, but
I don't
think
know why.
we worked really hard on that.
Ragman's Anguish came
That was
easy.
easy. Well, easy, but that
Well.
that one flowed.
And Blind Love did too.
But yeah, our process is definitely like just kind of going back and forth and fixing what's in there before.
Or going, I don't like that. Okay,
Yeah.
take it out.
And we're pretty. I would say I don't balk at what he's got unless I feel really strongly about it. And basically, if I feel really strongly about it, he lets me have it because I don't. You know, I pick my battles.
Yeah.
But that's, yeah, I mean, I don't know, is there something more specific, because.
No, just
Mainly
curious
done by
about that.
emails, a few phone
I think-
calls,
yeah.
and then when we could get together, we worked, because I go out to Los Angeles for
Yeah,
business,
and in
you know.
person is definitely the easier way, because we
Yeah.
can sit next to each other, and that kind of keeps us on the track of where the story's going, because I'm leaning over, or he's leaning over.
It's
we're going,
pretty
"Oh."
good though, because I can be writing and I can go to the bathroom and she can take over when I'm in, then I can come back and we just go back and forth like that, and we can pick up almost in the same voice where we left off.
No scraps, editorial scraps.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But not much. Mainly just like, no, I don't think his name should be that. I don't think that works well.
Well, and we'll do, this may shock everyone here, but we tend to over-explain.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of pick that up when you're reading the other person. So,
Right.
we'll come through and cut a line because, we just said that same thing. And
I'm a ruthless cutter. The thing is that when we first started, that was the thing that I told Kasey, was the one piece of advice I gave her on a novel that she wrote, which really wasn't bad. It was, she finished it. And I said, the thing is that you got to treat the reader like they're smart. You can't treat the reader like they're stupid. The reader knows a lot of things that you're over-explaining. And I don't think she believed me, but she went to Italy and the Italian editor told her, you're over-explaining.
what she said, now this is not PC, this is the exact translation. I like it, but you're writing for the retarded reader.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, best piece of advice, noted. Okay, stop explaining it. And I see that that's a tendency that we both have, me specifically still.
But I cut.
But because when we work together, it's easier to pick that up and
Right.
kind of get that,
Right.
Yeah,
I'm a ruthless editor because I know I do that. And so when I get through and I do all my corrections generally every day. We can't work exactly the same way when we're working together. It has to be different. But I write 3 to 5 pages a day at least. Sometimes I get more. I wrote this morning, in a hotel. But when I get through with that, I proof it then. So really, there's no telling how many times I've revised it. I usually say I do one draft and a polish, but that I'm doing it as I go. And I always quit when I feel like I've still got a little gas, and then the next morning it'll be there and it'll just fill in, and I don't need to think about it. But I'll go through it and cut. And that's one of the things I told her. I said there's the old thing that they say about you got to kill your darlings, and sometimes you do because you go, oh, that's a great line, but it's not advancing the character or the plot. Now I do believe that you should go off on side trips. I believe that you learn more about the characters when you learn something that they're telling you that isn't directly related to the story at that moment. But it's got to be interesting.
Gotta be interesting. Yeah.
Any other questions?
What's the longest and shortest it's taken you guys to write a book?
Well, these were stories in this. You're talking about in general overall?
Yeah.
I wrote a book in 11 days one time, but most of the time it takes me 3 to 6 months.
well, in the novel, I've only finished the one, and that took me about 6 months.
Yeah, and then she's working on one now.
I'm working on it, yeah, and that'll probably be done in December. So that'll be 8, 9 months, and it's because with me, I also do a lot of other things. So like if I wake up that morning and I have an audition across town, I wake up, I go to the audition, I come back. It's now 4 o'clock. Then so it's a little bit structured differently because I do more than one thing.
And you go on
And
tours with the music.
yeah, and that's it's just like you get up early and then so it's not as consistent. So I'd say like 9 months with that.
Yeah, the stories, they all came reasonably quick, didn't they?
I think for the most, I'm trying to think. Blind Love came really quick because that was already here. So that just was like,
Well, you drove that vehicle.
and then Bleeding Walls, that I felt like we sludged our way through that one.
But it was good when we got through.
Yeah, but that one I felt like we had to
Had
kind
more
of find.
trouble.
But that was also the first time that Jana and Dana, there it is again. That's why I can't do it. Dana and Jana,
Them two.
crossed universes, so that
Right.
took a little longer. And then Ragman's Anguish, what was that?
Oh, that was quick.
2 months.
Yeah, and that's working not
That's
every day.
including
I mean,
editing,
because
not
I'm
working
writing,
every day,
I'm
yeah.
writing novels and writing stuff. She's doing her stuff, but we would go, okay, we got to get back on that. So we get back on that and hammer out what we were doing, and then read it and make sure everybody was happy with what was going on. So,
Yeah.
any other questions? Yes, please.
What's the difference between a short story and a novel?
one's short and one's long.
About 5,000 words, more or less.
Well,
5
yeah,
to 7 for
yeah,
short.
yeah.
A novelette would be like 10 to 12,000.
And a novella would be more like 20 to 30,000.
And
I mean,
a novel is
and
like-
those aren't hard and fast rules.
Novel's like, what,
I
60 to
have
120?
Yeah, I have to admit, I've had some novels published that are 30 to 40,000.
But the average.
But that's about right.
So
yeah.
short story. I mean, some of these are like little novelettes,
Right.
like 10 to 12,000. I think
Right.
Blind Love was 5,000. I think it.
Right. Everybody's different, but I generally always know when I start writing something, if it's a short story or a novel, I can just feel it. But I've been wrong. You know, I wrote the first Ned the Seal was supposed to be a short story, and it just kept going. Zeppelin's West. And I did a book, a long story called Mad Dog Summer. And when I got through with it, I said, there's just more there. And it became The Bottoms, which is probably my most popular book, no doubt about it. And I did one called On the Big Blow, and then later I did a more, so Ridley Scott's supposed to do that one too. Yeah, he's producing it. They were originally going to use my screenplay, but the guy that was going to use my screenplay, Mark Romanek, he quit or decided they couldn't make a deal, whatever it was. And so now Owen Moverman, is that how you say his name? Moverman. Yeah, who's he's done something. He wrote a script, but they have a director that was really well lauded at Sundance, and a black director too. And it's about Jack Johnson and the hurricane in 1900. It was a real hurricane. It wiped out Galveston, and it was kind of like Atlantis, because at that point it was almost on the verge of being New York before New York became New York. It had streetcars, all stuff. In 1900, it had advanced electric lights, all kinds of things like that, and it practically wiped Galveston off the map. There's one scene I put in there, and people always go, "Oh, my scene, that's so weird." But it really happened. Is that this couple, and the water was coming, and they had their baby with them, and so they put their baby's hand and nailed it up like this, and the baby's the only one that lived of that family, and they found it. At least that's the stories that I read. And the family was destroyed. But had they not nailed the baby's hand to that, there's part of the structure or something. It was something they felt was solid, and they nailed the baby's hand to it. The baby survived.
Had a bad hand though.
Bad hand. Bad hand. Yeah. Yeah. Water always ran through.
Ouch. Joe, you've done just about. I'm trying to think of all the different genres. I mean, you've done science fiction, you've done horror. Is there any style that you haven't really tackled?
I actually did a romance story for what was it? Ferrari magazine. They asked me. They said, "Okay, do 1,000 words," and they told me how much they were paying. And I thought, "Oh hell yeah!" And I decided to do a romance story because I had never written one. So I did. So I've done that too. But historicals, just about everything. I'm sure there's something I haven't done, but I've done a lot. I think my short stories are about 400 of them or something like that. And a lot of nonfiction articles and things like that. So I really don't know.
Not at all.
45 years of doing it.
Well, thanks so much, you guys, and
Yeah.
congrats on the book. Exciting, very exciting. Let's give them a nice warm round of applause.
Thank you.
And thanks to our Facebook audience, which I completely forgot about. All right, we'll have you sign over there. If you guys wouldn't mind, just fold up your chairs and put them against the closest wall.